It turns out that despite the best efforts of the Diablo 4 devs nerfing like one of the most powerful skill combinations that ever been put into the game directly into the ground, Minion Necromancer in whatever form it's going to take, and nobody really has the answer quite yet of what literally the best version of it is. But it turns out that the build absolutely smacks. And just to be able to prove how much it slaps, let's go ahead and look at some of this great footage. Here's us clearing out the first Capstone at level 30, 31, one of the numbers. I'll get it in editing. We would have been lower level, but we were kind of catching up. We were playing some different things. We had a buddy who we wanted to rush through as well. Here's us clearing out World Tier 2, also at a ridiculously low level. We very easily could have cleared this out at level 40, bare minimum, maybe 37, 38. But again, we had a friend that we wanted to get caught up with us. And the build is disgusting. It absolutely slaps. Golem absolutely demolishes every single thing anytime that you click this button. I'm not even sure what my damage numbers look at like right now. I think I did like a 10 million white damage hit not that long ago. It's kind of hard to see because you have so many minions attacking simultaneously. Now, what I don't have for you is the exact science of every single thing that's going on here. I know that's typically what I bring to you in these scenarios, but basically I want to get out how I've been progressing, how I've been leveling, how I've been experiencing the game, what I think the best practices are. I'll give you a very quick breakdown of the aspects I'm using, Book of the Dead, what I'm prioritizing in my Paragon, as well as the gear that I have, so that you walking in tomorrow or people just getting into this starting over the weekend have a good roadmap for how you can get here, because we are at the end of a 12 hour long play session. We're already level 88. We were going very casually, taking a lot of breaks, trying out a lot of different content. We easily could have been level 100, even something like 4 or 5 hours ago, if all we did was just sit in hell tides the entire time, which are phenomenal, by the way. But here's what I got for you. Go ahead and use the timestamps down below. Basically, everything you're about to see does translate up into the max roll build guides that we already have written by Chronix right now, both for the end game of regular Minion and Shadow Minion. So you can already go check out that for all of the nitty gritty details. But let me go ahead and show you my approach to this build so you can get a better idea of what you can expect being able to do. But basically, every single person sitting in my chat the entirety of this stream has just been laughing on their way to the bank for how easy each Capstone has been, how quickly they were progressing into World Tier 4, the amount of damage they were doing, how easy it was to gear. The build is like a dream come true, and I haven't even been using the Season's Journey. I just keep forgetting to go check it and click it. This is just the random gear that we've been dropping along the way. So remember, timestamps down to everything below. If you enjoy what you're seeing, if you like what you got going on right here, consider subscribing to the channel. I normally ask at the end, but I'm going to do it right here, right now, because I know there's a lot of new eyes coming to the Necromancer, most notably the Minion Necromancer. And I gotta be honest with you, I'd love for y'all to join me here. But there we go. Let's go ahead and break down everything so you have exactly what you need and you know what to build towards. Starting off with the skill tree, I want to just very quickly define what type of Necromancer you're looking at right now. What you are seeing is a pure Minion Necromancer. It means that we're focusing on Golem's damage. The rest of our minions are there to basically provide support to our primary goal, which is make our Golem use his activation as quickly as possible and do millions upon millions upon millions of damage, basically for free. When you ask about like what's a shadow minion, what's not a shadow minion, I see you're using blight, etc., etc. A shadow minion build would be using shadow blight for being able to proc a blighted aspect. We're not currently doing that, and I don't think that that is worse or better necessarily. I'm pretty positive that shadow minion will be the best version of this build in the end game, but this one is very straightforward, very easy to build. So going pure minion is going to do you vastly superior to any other experience that you could have before you have a better understanding of the build. We don't care about our generator. I am currently maxing out blight. You literally don't need to be doing this at all. I was relying on this in Ebon Piercer a little bit earlier on, but you just want to cast blight every once in a while to make sure that you're getting the 20% damage multiplier from the supernatural blight. Also, we're going to be using the void aspect, which means that monsters get pulled onto blight, and that basically means that we get to crowd control for free, and it makes it an incredibly important survivability tool. Obviously, we want hued flesh to be able to generate corpses all of the time. We're going to be eating our corpses just by using the raise skeleton skill on our skill bar, and that's going to be activating a lot of different systems for us. But we also need to be able to proactively generate corpses in case our minions haven't caught up to whatever we're fighting yet, so we're not caught out in a compromised situation. You notice that we're not using Blood Mist, and it's because we're using our Golem activation for all of our unstoppable needs. I do have the 3 points into Spiked Armor because there's just kind of nowhere else to put them at this point that I think would be more valuable. I do think that it's generally good to have a little bit of Thorns damage, especially in the early game, just to help with your AoE clear, because your monsters are going to be hitting your minions a lot more often than your minions are going to be hitting the other monsters until you have a lot more attack speed on your build. At this point, I super duper don't need this, and I would actually recommend taking out these points and dumping them into Decrepify for even more damage reduction, even more slow. Do not sleep on putting a bunch of ranks into Decrep. Obviously, we're going to pick up all of the various masteries. I am picking up 3 points into Grim Harvest because this is our primary way of generating essence so that we can continue to cast Decrepify and Blight without really having to have anything else on our gear. You should have a couple pieces of essence per second on your helmet, your chest piece, and your boots, bare minimum, and maybe some essence cost reduction on your rings and amulet. That will help you to be able to spam Blight more often in the early game to feel like you're contributing like a significantly larger amount to your overall damage, and you're not as tied to having to wait to use the Golem activation. At this point, I have more than enough cooldown where it's not really a problem, as you just saw from that gameplay, and I'm also just going to splash it in throughout the video. But that is one of the reasons why it's really important to make sure that you can generate essence by consuming corpses. Obviously, a 3 points into Fueled by Death so that we get a big damage multiplier that also works for our minions. Like I said, Decrep, Abhorrent Decrepify to be able to reduce cooldowns even further. Luckily, minions are still bugged and their auto attacks can trigger very specifically Decrepify. No, they do not have lucky hit chance. And I am going to just basically put out a here's what you need to know about minions video, since again, a lot of people are coming into this class and this build for the very first time, but they can very specifically trigger this effect. So that's nice to have. Amplify damage to be able to increase both of our damages. Death's Embrace to be able to increase both of our damages as well as our damage reduction. Death's Approach for the movement speed, and then Skeletal Mage Mastery. Only the 1 point into Corpse Tendrils, and to be able to apply Vulnerable through this. Also, just the slow is really nice when Corpse Tendrils comes down, and the ability to basically pull the entire screen once you have tempers on your gear that will increase the radius of Corpse Tendrils is just like a wildly huge amount of like magnification and multiplication of your damage output, because the more monsters on the same spot when your Golem walks in and bashes them, the more monsters that are going to be dead at the end of that cooldown. Necrotic Carapace is triggered from our Lucky Hit Hued Flesh nowadays, that they recently fixed that. It's also triggered by our Reaper Skeletons and by our Army of the Dead. Basically means that we have Fortify up all of the time, which basically says that the first time that you would get hit while you have fortified status, you reduce that incoming damage by 15%. Then after rebuilding up your fortify, you get that bonus again. So it's just a really nice way of just kind of stopping one-shots from taking you out and giving you more time to be able to react to dangerous situations. Army of the Dead with Prime Dead for the additional chance of generating the corpses, which is really nice for us, and then obviously resummoning our army. Now, the real reason why we're using Army of the Dead is because people want to use Army of the Dead. You basically should actually be using Bone Storm. It offers a lot more survivability. It offers a lot of crit chance in the early game, which feels really good. The benefit of Army of the Dead is that you get a massive damage multiplier from one of our aspects, which is Unyielding Commander, which is really hard to turn down. There is a universe where you're either going to need the damage from Army of the Dead to get through like those last tiers of the pit, or you will need the survivability of Bone Storm to be able to survive through those last tiers of the pit. And I don't think that anybody has a concrete answer of which one of these is necessarily better at this point. Golem Mastery, obviously, I'm picking up Inspiring Leader for the crit chance, and then Hellbent Commander for the additional damage multiplier. You don't need Death's Defense, and you don't need Bonded in Essence. Don't waste points on these. They do absolutely nothing for them. They are effectively unkillable, especially since we're using Unyielding Commander with our Army of the Dead. And then obviously Kalan's Edict. Now that you understand the skill tree and what kind of goes into it, I'm going to very quickly go over gear pieces. Just basically follow the aspects, get good survivability, get good damage stats. You don't have to waste too much time. Feel free to pause the video and just kind of write these down if you want. Again, the Max Roll Guide already covers a huge amount of this. My personal guide in my Discord, which if you don't know, is down in the description below. That's where I maintain all of my versions of build guides. I collaborate with Chronix. He may have some different decisions. I may have some different decisions. It's not like one is better or worse, or like doing one will screw you over for the other one. Look at the Max Roll Guide, look at my Discord. Let's go over this very quickly. We're using Blight Pulls here. I really like cooldown reduction as well as much intelligence as I can possibly get on these gear pieces. I would also like maximum life if I can manage to get it. For the armor, intelligence, maximum life, and then any other like generally viable thing here. We would love to to have Golem Mastery on our chest, which is the only place that you can get the Golem Mastery at this point. They whittled it down to a single gear piece. We don't care about like Skeletal Mage Mastery or Skeleton Warrior Mastery on any of our other pieces of gear. Just Golem Mastery here would be really nice. You'll notice that I completely forgot to temper onto here. For your tempers, you want to hit 100% Corpse Tendril size. You would like to hit 100% Decrepify size as well, and then any total armor or maximum life that you need to up your survivability, or hit armor cap, which would be 9,230. Regardless of what level you are, that's the number that you need to get to. We are super overcapped at this point because I did toss Juggernaut on to this piece of gear. It's just that it fixed my armor problems and I don't really have to worry about it. Once I have better gear, I wouldn't need that at all. And I could actually go on and throw on something like Concussive Strikes here, or I could even toss on Blood Getters for even more damage onto the build. We just can't currently fit it right now, and hit all the caps that we need. For the gloves, attack speed, critical strike chance, and then intelligence I think are the best. Also just additive damage is pretty nice. This is where I'm also trying to fit as much golem damage, you'll notice, across my offensive tempers. And then I'm currently using hulking. Don't sleep on hulking. It's phenomenal. It's just great. They just can reduce their own active cooldowns, and 12% chance means that it actually happens quite often. It also says that they help to generate corpses, which could help you to not need to generate corpses from your Reaper skeletons if you want to use them for even more cooldown reduction. But as it stands right now, and I'll go over the Book of the Dead, I'm not currently using them for that purpose. For the pants, intelligence, maximum life, and then here's where I like to put my armor in my total armor roll, so I can hit armor cap on a build that actually has the stats that we're looking for. Also, just for people who are trying to get into World Tier 4 and survive very easily, do not sleep on putting a resistance temper roll on each one of your defensive pieces of gear, so your helmet, your armor, and your pants, and that can basically solve all of your resistance issues, along with 2 different colored gems in your rings or amulet. Here's where we are fitting Occult Dominion. Obviously, you just want +4 more minions here. Since we're going for the golem damage, I wouldn't recommend putting this onto the amulet, because we don't really need 2 more minions on top of that. This is just really good to be able to get a large bonus out of our Shadow Mages, and again, as many corpses out of our Reapers as possible. For the boots, movement speed, intelligence, maximum life, plus ranks to corpse skills wouldn't be the worst thing, because that would decrease our cooldown on corpse tendrils, but even more movement speed for the tempers. And then here's where I'm putting slaughter. Just so good to have slaughter because it works in town as well. For the weapon, they took attack speed off of our weapons. You can't get it on the weapon anymore. So there are less good options on our weapon for what you're looking for. I am using a 2-handed scythe. One of the things I don't necessarily understand is what is actually the best weapon base nowadays. I am going to put in a ton of hours of testing this tomorrow, so look forward to a deeper breakdown on my analysis on what weapons I think are best. But Life on Kill is just a great way to keep yourself alive, as well as your minions in the early game. It has the highest base damage to help to increase the amount of damage that your golem does on their activation, which isn't necessarily worried about your attack speed. The golem activation just kind of goes off when you use it, right? The actual animation length is based off of your weapon speed, but it's not so slowed down by using this that I don't think that it's worth it. We're going with maximum life, intelligence, and then any good flat damage. You want to get up to 100% chance to crit, so crit damage would work real, like here in general. Also, vulnerable damage would also work really well in this piece of gear. Then we're going with golem damage, and then I would like minion attack speed for the weapon temper. I just haven't gotten it yet. But you can see how much additive damage we're getting on this thing, even though it's a minimum roll and I haven't masterworked it at all. I'm also putting Frenzied Dead here. You can basically choose between Reanimation or Frenzied Dead as the 2 best options to put onto your 2-handed weapon. I personally would like for them to basically get as high into the second cap of attack speed here, because it's going to help with Cult Leader, giving them additional damage. But on top of that, just like maxing out their total breakpoints and making sure that their animations are as fast as possible. That's also going to go a long way to make sure that they're able to trigger hulking as often as possible to reduce the cooldown of the skill even further. Don't sleep on reanimation on a 2-hander. For the amulet, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I just have a pretty bad amulet. Attack speed is pretty good, critical strike chance is pretty good, cooldown reduction is pretty good, maximum life is not terrible. I would like Hellbent Commander here just for even more multipliers for our minions. And then this is where I'm actually putting Hardened Bones. The cool part about Hardened Bones on your amulet is that it's 38% damage reduction. That is an insane amount of damage reduction. A single amulet saying that you are taking 60% of total damage, and that's after we also reduce the damage with Decrepify, is a amazing amount of survivability on this one piece of gear. I would highly recommend putting this on here. if you are dying at all, and just enjoy how much survivability you got. We have more than enough damage. You need to survive long enough to apply it. For the rings, attack speed, critical strike chance, and then intelligence or a flat damage roll here. Maximum life also isn't terrible. Absolutely temper on golem activation skill reduction, as well as golem damage onto both pieces. Here's where I'm putting Unyielding Commander. You might ask, why not Unyielding Commander on the two-handed weapon? And it just turns out that right now, Army of the Dead has a pretty long cooldown, even with Decrepify. So Reanimation, as well as Frenzy Dead, have a significantly higher uptime of overall damage application than Unyielding does. And we more so use Unyielding as a big bomb to be able to one-shot the bosses at the end of the pit, and in whatever other content that you're doing. And then for the other ring, basically every single stat that I just said, but this is where we're putting Reanimation. Again, Reanimation could end up on your two-hander if you have more than enough attack speed from the rest of your gear. I just don't personally have that much right now. For the Book of the Dead, and I've already kind of alluded to this, I've been playing around with a couple different options for the Reaper. I kind of just keep going back and forth. I would love to be able to use cooldown reduction here, although they're a little bit janky in how often they actually like successfully hit a target with this skill, and they only proc it once every 10 seconds regardless of their attack speed. The ability to generate corpses is really nice because it basically means you don't have to wait as long when you walk into a boss fight. You can basically always have a corpse be able to corpse tendrils, consume it with raised skeleton to get your buff up, and then one shot with your golem. So I think like it kind of just comes down to flavor, it comes down to taste, it comes down to the rest of the stats that you have on your gear. And I think that generating corpses is going to end up to the best option for most people kind of walking in. And then people who have really, really good gear are going to be able to move over to the cooldown reduction here. In the super late endgame, where you don't need cooldown, you don't need corpses, you want to use defenders with the ability to taunt, because this applies a huge amount of stagger. Not only will it just like generally increase your overall survivability, but it will make bosses have more damage multipliers applied to them more quickly once they are staggered, and that will drastically increase your DPS there. So if you're looking at max run, like why are they recommending defenders? That's why we are. For mages, I am currently using the number of mages increases how much damage you do because I think it works for Golem. I haven't tested it yet. If somebody else has, go ahead and comment down below. But obviously I'm going to go test it tomorrow. I've just kind of been too busy blasting and just trying to get gear together so I can go test all of these things. If we were not using this, I would be using cold mages apply vulnerable because cold mages also apply stagger when they chill targets. That will also help to bring down bosses significantly faster. And then for golems, we are going with blood golem. Now, there's a lot to talk about with Golem, and a lot of this is going to be dependent on the breakpoints that we can hit with our attack speed with our weapon bases. For people who are curious, the Bone Golem attacks the fastest out of every Golem. The Blood Golem attacks basically 20 to 50% slower than the Bone Golem, depending on how much attack speed you have. And then the Iron Golem attacks a full 100% slower, or basically takes twice as long to attack as the Bone Golem does. So Blood Golem, a very nice middle ground of how quickly it attacks, how quickly it's able to apply hulking. But on top of that, obviously, its drain ability is the strongest activation out of any of the golems for damage. Because not only does it do 50% bonus multiplicative damage, but the actual activation of Golem, if you read down near the bottom, says damage and healing received are tripled if the enemy is drained and there's only a single enemy. Meaning that this is a 150% or a 2.5 times total multiplier of your golem damage. So the blood golem is just basically the perfect middle ground as far as like attack speed is concerned and one shot potential. Also, it just generally helps to keep you alive because it's going to be draining targets all the time and healing you as well. I have made the developers aware of the fact that the Iron Golem has a really inconsistent attack pattern where rather than attacking twice and then pausing, sometimes it just punches one time and then weirdly pauses, basically losing 50% of its overall like attack speed that you could possibly pump into this thing. And they are aware, hopefully they're going to look into it and maybe normalize it. And then Iron Golem won't feel as bad as it does currently. And then maybe it would have a better use in endgame guides. Now I have a really bad Paragon board here. You should follow the max roll Paragon board because that thing's smart and good and put together well and tells you when to get the various glyphs that you have and when to level them up. I just really haven't been running Nightmare Dungeons. In fact, the only glyph that I've leveled up to rank 15 is Golem, and then I've started leveling up Essence, and then I haven't leveled up a single other glyph at all. I'm just using glyphs that will work in those areas. It's very inefficient, but this is what I'm working with just in case you want to see the idea of it. One, we want to prioritize resistances and maximum life every single where that we possibly can, because you need that survivability. So we're currently using Amplify in the starter board to get more armor as well as just a general damage bonus whenever we curse a target. I then built into Cult Leader. Here in Cult Leader, I'm currently putting Control. Why am I not putting Dead Razor? I haven't leveled up Dead Razor, but Control gets us a 1.2 multi whenever we cast Decrepify on any target and whenever we stagger a boss. Then we build up through Puppeteer to be able to get minion attack speed and build up into Cult Leader. You only need to reach a total of 100% attack speed to get the maximum bonus out of Cult Leader. They did fix this. Luckily, GMS has actually confirmed that. So shout outs to y'all. I really appreciate you. You do still need to hit 20% breakpoints. So if you have 20% attack speed or 39% attack speed, you get the same bonus out of this until you actually reach 40% attack speed. So just remember that. Be like, hey, why am I not getting as much damage? Maybe you're not hitting the breakpoint here. After that, I actually built into Hulking Monstrosity to further push our golem's damage. This is where I'm actually putting the Corporeal Glyph. This is going to get us another 1.1 multi for all of our physical damage and movement speed for all of our active minions. It's also just going to further buff our golem armor and our golem damage nodes here. I then built down into Frenzied Golem to give him even more attack speed and damage. Obviously, you notice I'm not hitting any of the requirements here because I don't have enough stats yet. After that, we build down into Flesh Eater. In Flesh Eater is where I'm currently putting my Golem Glyph because I can hit the minimum requirement to get that 25% damage multiplier active. You notice I'm picking up a lot more all resistance here. And I'm also picking up the targeted glyph just as like a decent amount of additive. This will be much less important once you have all of your tempers on that give you a ton of additional Golem damage. You really won't need these things, but at least for right now, it is beneficial. And obviously we're building into Flesh Eater. Again, why are we building into Flesh Eater? How are we actually proccing that? You use Raise Skeleton, which consumes a corpse when you activate it. Don't forget that. Lastly, we're building into Scent of Death here. A great general legendary glyph. Also lets us pick up the additional maximum life from the rare node Shadow Resilience. And then here's where I'm going to be putting in Scourge. Scourge, that seems weird. We're not a darkness build. You said this was pure minions. Yes, we are using Blight. Blight is damage over time, and that says that when we deal damage to a target affected by shadow damage over time, us and our minions deal 10% more damage. So by just applying Blight to the target, we're getting a 20% multiplier and a 10% multiplier. That's really nice. Don't sleep on using Scourge. Similarly, you could actually be using Darkness here. So the reason why Darkness is so nice, let me just go ahead and find Darkness really quickly. Darkness, behind my big old head here, also says as you apply shadow damage to a target, reduce their damage. So it's going to reduce incoming damage before it even hits your DR here. And it's very easy to proc Blight on targets multiple times since it's going to pull all those targets together. So this is also a really good survivability option. If you don't need more damage, swap over to Darkness. If you don't need more survivability, swap over to Scourge. Now, I've already kind of extolled the virtues of the build. I think it's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly good. It's the most fun I've had at a season start. It's like absolutely crushing every single thing. My longtime friend in mod, you might have seen them playing with me if you're watching live streams, named Trev, is playing their very favorite, trample werebear druid, just kind of walking around and just trample smashing everything and doing all the big hits, and it's really nice and it's awesome. And I've already killed everything by the time they run up to the monsters. Shout outs to Trev for being willing to just kind of get carried around all day. I know that can get boring, but it's the first time I've ever like run faster and done more damage than everything else on the screen around me, and it feels damn good to be playing that. Let me know down in the comments what you've been doing, what you've been experiencing, how you've been playing it. The seasonal content giving us just a ton of unique items has also felt really nice. No, I'm not using Ring of Mendelm, but feel free to toss on Ring of Sacrilegious Soul if you find it. It'll just generally help to keep your minions up and alive and the raised skeleton effect on you more often. Definitely not a bad option. But again, sound off down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I truly hope that it helps. Look forward to the Maxwell guide. Continue to get updated as we develop more and more of the understanding of how all these like new interactions work and getting to the nitty-gritty details. Again, look forward to the video I'm going to be putting out soon about how everything works and whether or not Shadow Mages empower everything and Blood Getters empowers everything and how weapon attack speed works. It's going to take me a little bit of time, but I promise to get out to you as soon as I possibly can. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, I truly hope that it helps. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.